strangers, no offense, but we'll become best friends after this. But
Oh
listening
yeah,
to
absolutely.
people that I have not met before tell me that they listen to my podcast, I'm like, are we in love right now?
Am I
Are we
aroused?
best
Yeah, no,
friends?
Am
absolutely.
I?
Yeah.
Uh-oh, peekaboo. What's going on down there?
The Necronomicon awaits.
A ritual must be performed.
Seems fairly obvious. Batu, Miranda.
I told you I would find you.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
It's showtime.
What's your name? What? What is your name?
We are men of misfortune.
What's going on, misfortunate listeners? It's me, Tyler Campbell. Today, I'm joined with two special guests from the Sorta Kind of Funny podcast, Lauren and James. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing magically delicious. I'm doing good. Just got off work, drank a bunch of caffeine. I'm gonna shit myself. We're doing good.
Woo! Oh, wow. This is Lauren. I'm great as well. Just here. We're very excited. James, what are you wearing? Did you just put some glasses on?
I'm waiting for the
wear
Clark
glasses.
Kent moment where he like rips him off and he's fucking super Mormon. Dun, dun, dun.
Super Mormon.
Hello, my name is Elder Price.
Yeah, but except I was Elder Norris. Let's go. No, they're my blue light glasses. Why you gotta attack me like that,
Cool.
Lauren?
No, they came out of nowhere. I respect them. I think they're really cool, James.
Thank you.
I like him. I think they look
Thank you.
you look very suave, my sir.
Ooh.
So today we're going to be talking about their Mormon past. Lauren is an ex-member, and so is her husband, which we will definitely be getting into. And her brother James is a current member. And I want to know from you guys where it started. Was it your parents? Have you guys been doing this since birth, or what?
Yeah, so I'll share my little brief. We grew up very heavily in the church. We had I'm speaking for James and me here. I know he'd agree. We had a great upbringing. Like, our parents were raised in the church, their parents, so it was very much a long line of members. We had a great childhood, great parents. It was a lot of high demand religion, though. But you don't know it when you're growing up. Really, you kind of have thoughts, and you're like, this is interesting. We're very unique. But yeah, we grew up and we were raised Mormon or LDS.
Yeah. So yeah, like Lauren said, so we were born members of the church. Our mom's family were like original members that like came to Utah. The Mormon church moved to Utah.
No shit, with
the pioneers. Yeah, they
Brigham Young. Mm-hmm.
Brigham Young, yeah, because it was Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, and then Brigham Young and Warren Jeffs. Is that right? Split.
So it wasn't Brigham Young; it was years down from that. But yes, Warren Jeffs is a split off the FLDS church.
Yes, which we'll definitely be touching later.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's a whole
That's rough. But got a lot to cover.
So yeah, that's our mom's side. Yeah, our mom's side of the family has been members since like basically Joseph Smith time period, right? And then our dad's like a long time. I'm pretty sure like we have like very shameful. And then our dad actually, his family, they were converts to the church on their side of the family. They're all like, I think they were Methodists. They were Christian, just not LDS
Southern,
Mormons.
Southern Bible Belt.
But and then like Lauren said, grew up and she kind of hit the nail around the head where you don't realize it's a high demand religion when you're a child, and like every day
you're going a ton.
We went every single morning before high school. We go to church. It's every
we did 4 years of seminary. Every summer we'd go to I went to a girls camp. James would go to scout camp, which was LDS. It was like with the church. We'd go to EFY. We would go to youth conferences. Like we were submerged the most Mormon you could ever meet.
Yeah.
And we were proud of it. We loved, my nickname in high school was Mormon, and I loved it because to me, I was proud of it, you know? And again, you don't know until you realize what people think of you.
You start to connect the dots and you're like, damn.
Yeah.
So, with that, I mean, with Lauren being out and James, you still being in, I mean, there's got to be some kind of tension with the family, right? Like the whole family didn't get out because obviously you're still in. So you being in and Lauren and her husband being out, was there any kind of tension between your parents, like, you know, telling Lauren like, hey, you're making a bad decision or what? I mean, was there any kind of persuasion with the church or your parents to Lauren and her family?
So,
Lauren, do you want to take that or do you want me to
laughing right now? The reason why is we are the 1% of the Mormon population ever.
Mhm.
We all left the church within, well, James, you have your own segue, but we all were out at the same time within like a month, I would say. My parents, all of our siblings, all four of their spouses. James can share his little thing with the parents because James had it very separate from us.
Yeah. So originally, so I left the church in 2020. I was the first one in our family. Everyone was very active, like Lauren said. We grew up our entire lives, was our personality. In 2019, so I actually went to BYU, which was like, you know, the Mormon
college,
church.
right? Yeah.
I took classes from there, learned a lot of stuff about the history of the church. I was kind of like, holy shit, like no one ever tells you this. I spent 2 years of my life in Ecuador as a missionary. And then I just kind of started learning a lot of stuff that the church didn't talk about or is not forward with. And I kind of decided for myself, like, okay, I don't think this is true. This can't be the truth, right? I left the church. I didn't tell anyone in my family. I was married at the time. My wife knew, got married very young. A lot of Mormons do.
Yeah.
She knew. She was a member of the church. Yeah. Yeah. So that happened. And then a year later,
but she had a hard time with it.
He did have a hard time. Yeah. Because, you know, that's like, it's your everything. It's your world. It's your literally your eternity, right? That's what's taught. And then that all that happened a year later. My older brother reached out to me, was talking to me about, he's like, hey, I have some questions about you about the church, right? Because I think everyone in the family kind of figured it out because we had been together a couple times since I'd left. And I made a couple comments about stuff.
You can know.
I wasn't wearing like the Mormon underwear.
Yeah, the Mormon, the whitey tighties.
Yes.
Yeah. And
you
the
know,
light was gone.
Right.
The spirit was
like,
missing from my soul.
Is coming through.
Yeah.
He doesn't wear his whitey tighties. The end of times are coming.
But right.
Like,
yo.
So anyway, and then a year later, within like a month, I remember talking to my parents and them being like, okay, we're just kind of curious why. And then a month later, everyone's like, we're done with the fucking church. I was like, holy shit, like, what the hell? Which is, like Lauren said, such a small percentage of the Mormon church ever leave, let alone the entire family. We are an anomaly. It is kind of crazy. And then since then, I have returned, not at all in the way in which we lived our lives before. I go sometimes, I kind of do my own thing in the church. I've kind of decided where like, it's a place where there's like community and I'm happy with it. And I don't feel like I have to live up to the expectations, air quotes, expectations of like what the church teaches. And for me, I'm okay with that, which is not technically the way you're supposed to do it at all.
He's not a good member.
So,
James is what they call a jack member. Like he doesn't believe in the doctrine. However, it's community, like, and it's home. It's nostalgic too, right?
I think it's what you guys have known your entire life. So it's something that's very understandable whenever it's like, well, you know, I did return, but I didn't go full force with it. Now, does the community as a whole like look at you different? I mean, because you're not doing the anti-caffeine, underwear. I mean, how do they treat you different?
So for me personally, it's weird because I feel like a lot of this newer, younger generation of people are a lot more like, hey man, you kind of do whatever you want as long as you
it's very nuanced.
Like, very nuanced. Like you kind of do what you want. You don't have to always wear the white tighties. If you have caffeine or like coffee every once in a while, no one really cares. It's a lot more of like people's parents or like our parents' generation where they're like, oh, you left the church, we're not friends anymore. Like our parents have lost tons of friends, right? Whereas people our age that we've talked to are more like, hey, you know, like whatever decision you have to make is more for you. But sometimes I do feel like it, especially because I'm in Utah, which is like Mormon fucking central. You can tell. And I definitely, I can pull off the Mormon look. If I told someone I was LDS, no one would question it. I look like the epitome. I don't have any tattoos. You know, I have short hair. I'm white. That's like screams LDS, right? Which is like, it's kind of
clean
like,
cut.
It's clean cut, right? That look. But I do have friends that are LDS that have tattoos and stuff like that. And they tell people and they're surprised. And they're like the ones that are full force Mormon, right? Like follow all the rules and everything. So for me personally, I can kind of like slip under the radar with where I live and I don't really feel any effects from it. But people's parents that are my friends, that's where I feel it because they're like, is that coffee you're coming into my house with? Are you bringing spirits of the demon in here? And I'm like, yeah, that's right. And I start just casting Satan spells left and right.
Love it. I was going to say too, you're in the dating realm in Utah. So that's a whole other beast in itself. Yeah. Like they're looking for a return missionary and you're like, that's me.
I'm like, I am a return missionary.
But exactly. I break all the fucking rules because I'm a badass.
Yeah, for real.
I mean this in the most respectful way possible. That is the hardest part about leaving cults, is the idea of losing everybody and everything that you know, because you've spent so much time and so many years on this one thing and you're walking away from it. What was your breaking point? What was the point for both of you that, I mean, because you left, you came back, James. Lauren, you're still out. What was the kicker for everybody?
Yeah. So for me, I remember there's, like I said a little bit earlier, I took a class at BYU, and the whole idea of the class, and this just sounds, I mean, you know, when you leave stuff, kind of like what you said, you leave and you look back and you're like, what in the fuck is wrong with me, right? The whole idea of this class, this is a university taught class, right?
It is a university. Let us just
government funding. People come here and pay money to learn this stuff.
Yeah. This class is they have a religion department at BYU where you take classes and they teach you about their religion, right? And they're mandatory. You have to take them even if you're not a member.
It's fan fiction.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's like
it's literally fan fiction.
It's like we're gonna study the Lord of the Rings.
We need to be in Book of Mormon class. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, right.
Like, it's not like anyway, James.
Anyway,
I'm sure they just like specially like break down the book, right? That's what they're doing during the class.
Yeah. So a lot of it is like we're gonna talk about the history of it, how we can prove it, how anyway. So right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right. And the thing is, you're laughing, and us would have been like, "Are you serious right now? Like, let me prove it." Now
yeah. I'm like, how dare you?
Before we get too far into this, I want to go ahead and tell you that I did read the Book of Mormon for this specific.
You did not.
Yes, I did.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. The original script. You can find it all on Audible, and I spent an entire week listening to the garbage that you guys practice, and I don't mean this.
No, I mean
this. Yeah, I was gonna say I spent 8 years of my life in a Lutheran school. I mean, it got pretty culty at the end. I mean, I was like isolated for a while from other class members. It was, you know, we had the religion class where they force feed you. You have Wednesday study where you basically spend like 3 hours inside of the church reading scripture. You had every Sunday, you had to be there, you had to participate in everything the church was doing. So I get it. And
I'm impressed.
Yeah. Honestly,
I will say the book wasn't even written as scriptures. It was a book. When Joseph Smith originally came out with it, he's like, this is a book. People hated it. They're like, this is not entertaining. And so then when it ended up, they changed and they said, oh, this is actually inspiration. This is actually, scripture. Interesting how that happened. Then, they kind of held on to that, but it wasn't originally scripture. So I'm so impressed. You read.
I did it for you too. I did it for you too because I wanted to come to this with some extreme knowledge.
Holy cow, I'm impressed.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't get people as a missionary that I was trying to convince to join the church to read the whole book.
If you came to my door, I would not answer it. I would be like, yeah, no, man, you need to go somewhere else with that shit.
No, for like, brother,
episode. Got it.
Content. Throw me in front of a microphone. I'll be there.
Love it.
So anyway, I took this class, and the whole idea of the class was basically to explain away problems and stuff that the church has done in the past, and there were things that I never knew that had happened in the church. I never knew like a lot of stuff, and they don't talk about it. And then it started coming out because the internet exists, right? So people are like, we can
people start talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because originally they would write books and stuff. In the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of these books that would like that. Members would like, oh, this is anti-Mormon, but then they would collaborate like all these pieces of information and prove it with like documents and journals. Like, hey, this isn't just anti-Mormon stuff. Like, this is history,
right?
And then the church was like, oh shit, we need to get behind this and start teaching our youth and our people this. That way, when they hear this, they're not like, oh,
what's
this is the first time hearing this, right? And so I just
kind of like black people and how they were
in the priesthood.
Yeah, just now being able to go into the church. I believe it was 1978 when they were first allowed to come into the Church of Mormon, and the way they explain them in the Book of Mormon as being, they were the people in the middle, right? They couldn't decide between Jesus or Satan during the fight, right?
Yeah, it was.
Say that again. Sorry. Sorry, say that again.
The black people. The reason why people are black was because in the Book of Mormon. Was because there was a divide between Jesus and Satan, and black people were in the middle, and that's how they were marked, right?
So they were actually, because wasn't it Cain, James, that's
There's a
still
million different
what
things.
they it's theories.
Yeah, the one you're talking about specifically, though, and they're talking about in the Book of Mormon, is a lot about like Native Americans. The reason why they have
Native
dark skin
Americans.
is
Okay.
Yes. It's
so
racist.
they came to the
Very
United
much.
States, they came to the Americas, the Promised Land, right? We're in the
To
Promised Land.
Missouri.
And
We need to go to
airports.
Missouri.
Yeah.
We lived
Adam and
there.
Eve
I was
apparently
like,
were in
this is
Missouri.
I feel it. Why would they go there?
Evolution came
Can't spell Missouri without misery. I guess Jesus needed to be there too. I don't know.
Yeah, for
Fuck.
sure. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, in the Book of Mormon talks about how like they came to the Americas, and then there was a separation between two of the groups, the Lamanites and the Nephites.
Mhm.
And the Nephites were God's people, right? They were following the scriptures, they were following the commandments, all that stuff, right? And they stayed white. And
Yep.
then the ones that were not, their skin was marked, right? So it was like a visual evidence of their iniquity, of their sin, right?
Mhm.
And then later on, it talks about how like they started to interbreed, and then it got to the point where all their skin was dark, and the only way you could tell the difference between the two of them were if they were following the commandments of God or not. So they got to the point where it wasn't that skin tone,
So
but
they basically were
originally
able,
that is the explanation behind
they
it. Which
they were basically able to talk their way out of having like racial things started coming up in the 60s, and they were able to like I guess explain away why it was written the way it was originally. And I mean that's what all religions have to do in order to stay relevant. So you're not like I hate black people
exactly.
and it's 2023 now.
100%, 100%.
As a child, you hear these things, and then you ask, okay, so wait, why couldn't they come in? And it's like, oh, well, they just weren't ready. Why would as a race they weren't ready? It's just trying to explain, like you said, trying to stay relevant.
Yeah.
You just have to keep up with the times.
Yep.
Churches and cults.
Or else you fall behind, and then you end up like Scientology. And well, I'll get into that later. But they're
still going though.
They're still going somehow. Somehow.
Yeah. So anyway, that was for me. That was I learned a lot of stuff, and they would give me explanations like that, like the skin tones. I remember that always did not sit well with me. Even as a missionary, I would sit there and be like, that's kind of fucking racist. And then
you were serving people with darker skin too.
Yeah.
And then Ecuador.
I was in Ecuador. Yeah. And then also kind of the same thing what you're saying though. I remember I was at BYU, and one of my really close friends that I worked with, he came out to me as gay, and that's a big thing in a lot of Christian, it's like, oh, that's a big no. And I remember him telling me this, and me looking at him and going, I don't feel any negativity towards you. I don't think anything less of you, but I'm supposed to, I think. Like, I don't know, like it's like this weird world where I'm supposed to think that you're going to hell for some reason, but I don't feel that way. So am I wrong, or is the church wrong? And then being like,
well, I mean, that's what happened to
that was another big thing.
There was a student that went to your college that was given valedictorian, but he was gay, and he gave a speech, and he ended up killing himself because he was gay. And that's so unfortunate because of the religion and the way it it's practiced. It sucks.
So I actually was very pro like LGBTQ community before leaving, and I was very more like feminist. And in the church as a woman, it is very difficult. You do not rise to the ranks. Like
no, there's an umbrella. It's God, your husband, your kids.
Yep. Yes. And I mean, there's a part, when you get married in the temple, I had to basically seal myself to my husband, or like submit to my husband, and then he submits to God. It was very much, it was not like, it did not set well. I did not like that. I was like, this is not okay. So I just had these things in the back of my mind, but I would have never left the church ever in a million years, because it was truth. So why would I leave truth?
Right. Why would you leave your eternity to fate whenever you have no idea what's there?
Right. And so for me, I had an issue with modesty as well. I wore my garments. I was very in that, but I wanted to wear, I love fashion. Like, I was like, I want to wear a tank top. It's hot. Like, it was
100 degrees in Utah. Let me wear a fucking tank top.
Right. I was, pregnant in the summer in the South, and I'm like, this is just not okay. Wearing extra layers. Yeah. So, and then I remember a couple of years ago, I went to visit my mom, and she just started unloading word vomit about, she's like, did you know Joseph Smith, went to jail and did all these things? Right.
Yeah, a couple times.
She's like, do you know why he actually was in prison the last time, why he was killed? I mean, unloading these things that I'd never heard of. And this is my mom, who normally when, it's like, don't tell your kids, you don't want them to leave. And she was unloading, and I forever owe her that, because if she never told me, I would still be it. My life would be so different. So I went with that, took it home, had panic attacks. My husband, so he's in surgery residency, and he saw me like freaking out every night. It was just like the most existential crisis. He's like, I would love to hear about this, but right now I can't. He was going through a very difficult time, and he's like, I can't have panic attacks right now. And I was like, I get it. A week later, things happened in our lives where we had a long car ride, and he's like, just unload, tell me everything. And we did. And after that car ride, he's like, I'm done. I'm like, oh, it lined up perfectly for us. And so I'm also very grateful for my husband to take
Being
the time
very supportive.
to listen.
Absolutely.
Yes, like you are told in the church, if your spouse is not living up to their temple covenants and everything, you should leave them, because you deserve to be with someone who will take you to the temple.
So what is a temple of covenants?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Just
Lauren, you're using words. You're using some verbiage
Sorry,
here.
I'm so
That's
sorry. It's
very
you're
Mormon.
good. You're good.
dialect. Yeah. Temple covenants, it's covenants that you make in the temple. And so basically you are things you're promising to your spouse, to God. That's what I mean by that. Like you
Okay.
promised to stay in the church.
Yeah.
And that was something we promised each other. So
yeah. Covenants just means things that we promise to God, and in return we will receive blessings
Mhm.
for them.
As long as
that's
we
what
keep
that
our
means.
end. Yeah.
Yeah. So like a baptism, when you get baptized, that's like a covenant, and then there's like other stuff too. So that's like what that word. We use that word a lot in the church,
Mhm.
like a lot. Because it means basically it's like, oh, not only am I promising God something, the God is promising me something. That's a very elitist.
The same
verbiage.
God who's giving you your own world to be a God over necessarily.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So
but
like,
the church doesn't say that anymore.
Yeah, they
like
changed
to
that.
gaslight us and
What?
say we made that up. Mhm.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
God, that's gotta suck.
Yeah. There's a lot of things like that. It's like, oh no, this was what I was taught. And they're saying
And they're
no.
like, no.
No.
Right. It's very hurtful. It's very hurtful.
So
They're like, you're crazy.
Yeah. Mhm.
so being an LDS, member, okay, so you guys are from Utah, right? Lauren, are you
No.
originally no?
So sorry, we're from all over. We grew up military dad, Memphis,
right. We
like
talked about this, yeah.
Mississippi. Yeah.
Air Force, right?
Yes. And so just south of Memphis is where we lived the longest. James went out to BYU. I went out to BYU. We all separately, we lived in Utah for a little bit when we were kids, but we've all lived there. Yeah.
Okay.
So I met my spouse.
I was gonna say, because you probably weren't around communities that would ask you questions about FLDS and LDS and how they would get confused and the lines being blurred between the difference of everything. Being around somebody, living in Iowa, we don't have very many Mormons out here, and the Mormons we do, they work at Deer. They don't talk about it. Like you can tell they've got long beards. They're very. It's really weird how I'm like depicting these people, but it's honest to God truth on how they all look. They just have a different demeanor about themselves. And
yeah, no, that sounds very FLDS. The
so
beards, but they might not be.
Well, no, these members weren't FLDS; they were just LDS. But the people that work at Deer, they don't understand the difference between FLDS and LDS, and they would constantly ask, "How many wives you got? You got like
we got
12 wives."
Yeah. Ours was, how many moms do you have? And I'm like,
we
one?
all the time, because they just don't. They thought it was all the same thing, and we would make up jokes. We're like, "Well, we got a few. They live in different states, so it's legal." And they're like, "Wow,
sister wives, fuck it."
We were
we're making jokes and not even realizing. We're like, no, but that's actually real for some people.
No, but like
go back
and
4
like,
generations.
Yeah.
So was that something that ever like bothered you whenever you'd find somebody that didn't understand the difference between that cult and your religion?
Yeah, it did for me, because I didn't understand. Like I was like, because for us, it wasn't that they didn't understand the difference. They thought all Mormons still practice that.
Oh yeah.
And so for me, I knew that polygamy was a thing. That was one of the reasons why I left. I hate polygamy makes me sick.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole history
How
of it
dare
made me
you?
sick.
I'm just kidding.
James, I'm in it. Shut the hell up. James was like, go polygamy, go polygamy. No, but
more wives, more headaches. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
More
No.
money,
I'm like, I'm a man. This benefits me. No.
But
so
that's it though.
No. That sounds like my nightmare, if I'm being honest.
Okay. Sorry, Lauren, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I'm joking. Oh yeah, so the polygamy thing, I remember kids in high school and stuff would make jokes, and I'm like, I'd go along with it and make jokes, but it was upsetting, because to me, I'm like, this is my truth and my like heart. This is me, my identity, and you're mocking this, even though like I get it. I 100% get where these kids were coming from. It's crazy sounding, and they just didn't know. I mean, I wouldn't go up and mock someone's religion or whatever, maybe behind their back, make a little hee joke.
Yeah.
I would never.
Haha, did you hear
crazy.
that they're fucking Jehovah Witnesses? They don't celebrate holidays. Fuck those guys.
Right.
It's so sad. But yeah. Anyway, James, did it bother you?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like the multiple wives and stuff like that. For me, I always kept thinking like they just don't understand
Right.
The difference.
that they didn't
If
want to
only
do
they
that.
knew.
Yeah.
God made them do that. God made them get that pussy. You know what I'm saying? Like that wasn't there.
All right, calm down, Warren Jeffs. Calm the fuck down. All right,
right.
It's so true.
They didn't
though,
want
'cause
all
you're
these
like,
bitches.
You're taught that they didn't want to do that. You are
Yeah.
literally taught no one wanted to. There weren't enough women. They had to like match them up, and so you're like,
Yeah.
oh, they're suffering.
Yeah.
As a
Aw.
non like sex having kid, like a little child.
Yeah, yeah,
Why
yeah.
would that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are a lot of controversies to your church, your religion. A big one I have kind of a problem with. I mean, besides like, there's a lot I have a big like problem with when it comes to the LDS. But my brother is an LDS member, and
Really?
So his he moved out to he's originally from Idaho. He's currently in the Navy. He's a non-practicing Mormon. He was very dedicated when he was living out in Idaho, but the second he joined the Navy, there's not so much of an access. I don't know where he is with that line, but from what I understand is when he goes back to Idaho to be buried, I won't be able to participate in his funeral because of his Mormon background. Now, from what I've understood is like weddings and funerals, baptisms, anything that's important that goes on inside of temple goes on inside of temple. Like we're not supposed to know. What kind of things can you tell me that go on during a baptism, a wedding, a funeral, anything that you're not the outside us non-believers aren't supposed to see?
James, do you want to explain the temple thing, like what happens in there?
Yeah, so there's a couple different layers to that that comment that you made or question, right? So the first one, baptism. So baptisms are done usually in LDS churches. They can be done really anywhere as long as there's water, because you have to go all the way under, right? So people are allowed to, that aren't members, are allowed to participate. They can't do the baptizing, but they can be present, right?
Okay.
So that is that. Then you take the next step, weddings. Yeah, Mormon weddings are in
Sealings.
temples. Yeah,
not wedding. Right.
They're called what?
It's called a sealing.
A sealing. What's the significance of it being called a sealing instead of a wedding?
Right. So the difference between the two are the different verbiage is pretty much the difference. You do these covenants that we talked about earlier where you're promising, but in this specific kind of marriage, this sealing, you're promising not just you and God, it's you and your spouse and God are promising each other things. So like you promise your wife that you're going to do X, Y, Z. She promises to obey you, which it's all changed and it constantly does change.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it currently is, but
Right,
you're basically
it's
promising.
Yeah, you're sealed together forever.
So
you
you're
can
like,
be married separately, and then like, so say you and your wife, you're like, oh, let's join the Mormon church. You know, you're in, and you can now get sealed in the temple. So it's not a wedding.
Yeah,
because you've already been married.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing it for the first time, then it'd be like a wedding sealing. It's just
flash sealing. Yeah.
right.
So
it's
then you
just
get
terminology.
Yeah. So then you become sealed, and you two are now like joined for not just this life, but forever and ever and ever, because the Mormon church teaches that families, like, you know, when you get married, you're like, oh, until death do you part. We're like, we don't say that in the temple. We say for time and all eternity. So that's what a Mormon like wedding, when they talk about in the temple, is that people cannot go into the temples unless they're members of the church, and you have to have been in for like, I think it's at least a year.
You need to recommend.
And the recommend, you have to have paid tithing, and you have to prove that you go to church and you follow all the rules, all those kind of things before you can get in. That's where you start to get into that cult elitism right there, is temple stuff, because no one can go in there unless you have a card that has a barcode number linked to your name and your account that goes, he pays his tithing, which is 10% of all your money. He follows the rules.
The fuck no. So this is like Harry, like, I mean, like all religion is it, you know, in the Bible for Christianity, you gotta pay, you gotta pay 10% of your weekly earnings into the church, which is bananas. But this is like a mandatory thing. This isn't just like a charity
to be able to go to the temple.
Yeah, so it's not. Let's be fair here.
Salvation.
Yeah,
Sorry, James.
Hold on. This isn't mandatory. No, never is this mandatory. But if you want to go into heaven forever and ever, You kind of need to
Yeah.
pay. So you make your choice. You get 80 years and not pay. Congratulations, or eternity in hell. Like it's very
that's where
like
the guilt.
non-mandatory, but it is mandatory.
If you
like
want to get to top tier heaven. So what you were saying with your brother, funerals are not done in the temple.
yeah,
There are baptisms for the dead is in the temple, and
That's what it
sealings,
was.
initiatory.
yeah,
So funeral is totally separate.
that's different. Yeah,
Right.
You
They don't
can
do
be-
anything as for the
How do we feel about the baptisms for the dead? Because they've definitely abused that in the past and like
Oh.
brought
and
in
with
people,
the
with
Jews
celebrities.
and the celebrities.
people-
Mhm. It's
yeah.
horrible.
Especially they in the 90s, the church did a bunch of baptisms for
Oh, a
people that were
bunch.
killed in the Holocaust.
The Holocaust, yeah.
And the whole point
It's
of the
disgusting.
Holocaust was killing people because of their religion, right? And then they're like, oh well, we should baptize for these people. The baptism for the dead. So that's a whole other thing. That's like if you didn't get baptized in this life and you didn't make those again covenants, that word with God, you can't go into what the Mormons believe is the highest level of heaven, right? Everyone's going to go to heaven, but not the best possible heaven.
Celestial kingdom. Mhm.
Exactly.
So during this like baptism for the dead, does
Mhm.
no one like stand up and go, is this a little fucked up that we're
So
baptizing
no dead
people
people.
that
No,
Huh?
we don't dead. Yeah, it's not baptizing
no
dead
dead bodies.
bodies.
Well, I know
Okay.
that, but like whenever they announce that they're baptizing like, you know, the Jews from the Holocaust or
Mhm.
a past celebrity that definitely wouldn't ever consider joining,
Yeah.
but for some odd reason they thought it would be a good idea.
Elvis is not interested.
Yeah.
No, Dunk it.
No one does, because again, like Lauren talked about in the very beginning, this is day one of our lives. We are talked about this until we're 12. So you can't go to the temple until you're 12 and do these baptisms.
Right. You're
Yeah, that's the first
indoctrinated
thing,
into
yeah.
all of this where you believe
Yes.
that this is the 100%
you
truth
sing-
of every
you
day.
sing
I get that, but it's
songs.
just like this like
I know.
Well, some people
I
do.
know.
Some people do, but it's kind of the same thing Lauren talked about. You're like, this is kind of weird. I don't agree with this, but you know, this is what God wants. So
It's brainwashing at a young age.
oh,
And it's when you go through
heavily.
the temple, you will have these, not everyone, but you have feelings. It's like, oh, this is interesting, kind of culty. What am I wearing? I'm seeing other things. There's chanting, making me very uncomfortable. But look, that's my mom and dad and my bishop and these people I
and
respect.
my next door neighbor.
Why would they do anything weird? You know, they're not in a cult. I'm not in a cult. It's very much like they're doing it, I'm doing it. This is all normal. Everyone does it. And then meanwhile, you're like, oh, okay, this isn't that normal. Yeah.
I totally get it. The indoctrination of everything, you know, being in it for such a young age. And whenever your church, you know, family members, your respected loved ones sit there and say, hey, this is what we're doing today. And you're just like, okay, I totally
Yeah,
get it.
exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Lauren, when you were having the conversation with your mom, when she had the freak out about finding out Joseph Smith's actual past of being a criminal and a liar and
Pedophile.
a pedophile and like
Keep going.
literally a lot of other things.
Yeah,
So
let's
like
the list.
yeah, we could it would be like an
Adulterer,
impeachment
yeah,
list of Donald Trump. I'll be here all day just saying the things he's done
longer
wrong.
probably.
It's-
Yeah.
Oh, just
It's
and
sad. Yeah.
yeah, like what was did you have like an internal freak out at that point in time?
Oh.
Because when I left my religion, when I left you know, I was in 5th grade and it was absolute hell for me. I went through the ringer with it and I asked a lot of questions and it was on my own terms. I didn't have anybody pry open my eyes and go, look at what you're fucking doing. What was your initial reaction? And did you have a this can't be true moment?
Yeah. It's it was that sick feeling of a drop. it was the most disgusting feeling. And they teach you in the church when you see ex-Mormon material or hear it, it's the spirit telling you this
Run.
is Satan. Like, yeah, it is telling you to leave because this is not truth. No, that's not what it is. It's your body responding to something that you've been told your whole life. It's going into shock, but it is truth. And so I absolutely freaked out. I was just listening, but I was asking questions because this is my mom. She doesn't lie to me, and I trust her. Luckily, we have a relationship where I was like, okay, she's not lying to me. So I was asking her. It was very sickening though. A lot of people learn little nuggets of information at a time, and they kind of choose to go down the rabbit hole. I kind of got sprayed in the face with a hose.
Yeah,
With
it honestly
but it
sounds
was-
like it. It does
It
sound
was
like
a nightmare, but it was again like I'm so glad. But in the moment it was horrifying to learn all that stuff. And so there's different sources. There's the CES letter. It's church education system. It's this person who wrote basically writes all the facts of the church down, the truth the church doesn't tell you, and has a bunch of sources that they link. So she was telling me about all this information that we didn't know growing up. And like James said earlier with the temple, there's a song, I love to see the temple. You sing these songs as a young child, and now
5 years old.
Smacked right.
Jesus loves the little children.
Yep.
I still remember all of mine, so I totally get it, man. I totally fucking get it.
Yeah, so it was very upsetting. And I would say up until like 6 months ago, I wasn't okay. Now I'm in a much better, stable place. But like,
if I were to talk to Lauren 6 months ago, what would have been this kind of conversation? Would it have been like
same,
but
type? More angry? Probably. I go in waves of anger or sadness.
You have every right to be angry. You have every right to be angry.
Yeah,
my eternal companion was taken from me, and by that I mean I was going to be married to my husband forever. And I knew that
you guys were going to rule a galaxy in a
right.
Hold on.
Far,
we
far
never
away.
said that. We never said that.
Never said that. I forgot.
Right.
I forgot.
Liars. So for me, like the realization that I could die and I don't know what happens, that was disgusting. Like that was horrible. I loved Joseph Smith. We did Nauvoo pageants, which is a play about Joseph Smith in Nauvoo. We dressed up as freaking pioneers.
Yep.
We sang, like, I'm not kidding. This was like full on fan fiction musical number. Like we did this. We did this for like 3 summers. Like, I had a testimony of Joseph Smith because what I was taught about him was beautiful. It's not the truth. So that it was like my religion died. Joseph Smith, this person in my life, died. I also had a Christianity faith like that. So it was my Christianity. It was everything plummeting. So it was bad. It wasn't good.
Are you doing okay now?
Oh yeah, I'm in a better place. It's definitely waves though. Like you said, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. I just like anyone going through anything like this, you are validated 100%. You are not
100%,
crazy.
100%. And that's what you and your family have done. You know, leave the church, leave everything you guys have known behind, and start a new life, regardless of the consequences of being alienated from your community, or fear of. Because I mean, James seems to be doing all right in the community, so. Just having that knowledge and still finding the strength to leave. It is such a hard thing to do. I mean, it's.
So you did it as a child. You said you were.
Yeah, I was in fifth grade, and I started. Well, I was hanging out with like a different crowd than I was going to school with, and they would ask me questions like, "Yo, so like, what's this about?" And I would start answering. They're like, "You sound fucking crazy," and it's like. Yeah, I'm going to go to school and ask these questions because you guys bring up a pretty good fucking point. So I would start asking questions, and by the church and the school didn't like it. So I basically would go to school and they would throw me in an office next to the principal's office. And it was pretty much the Xerox printer room. And they had a desk for me in there. And I spent 150 some days in it, dude. It was hell.
That's awful because they knew. That's impressive that you as a child thought like that. Like, a lot of adults, I didn't do that. Until it was thrown in my face. I think that's super impressive and brave that you were like,
Yeah, it wasn't brave. I didn't tell my parents about it. So I kind of like ate those 150 some days.
You lived under the roof. What do you do as a kid?
That's what I try to tell. That's what I try to tell my mom. Like, she's like, I don't know why you've never, like, you didn't decide to talk to me about it at this point in time, because I had an uncle that was taking me to school, and the principal would come out and talk to him about what was going on. Like, he was acting up today, so we had to throw him in the side office room, and it was
because
every
God
day.
wants that.
Yeah, because God wants this, because he's being disruptive to the class, and it's damning to their eternal souls.
Oh my god!
We had to put him in the closet.
We had to basically move him into the Xerox copy room and hope to God he gets a 5th grade education, because we are fucked.
Yeah.
So
oh my god! See what you're talking about right there. I don't want to cut off your story. I mean,
fine.
It's just the biggest problem I have with religions, especially Christianity, is this elitism mentality of
we're going to hell and we know better than you because you don't know exactly everything we know.
Exactly. And there's this card. I call it the trump card, the God trump card, right? Where no matter what you say, it doesn't matter because God told me to, therefore I have the right to do anything. If we want to invade the Middle East and call it the Crusades, well, God fucking told us to.
We
so
kill
we can do
millions
that.
and millions and millions and millions of people over religion, and
Right.
we don't blink an eye because it's in the name of God, and we still do that today.
Exactly. And you flip that, and other religions have done that too. It's not just a Christianity thing, but it's just the you have this eternal person who's in charge of the entire universe tells you to do X, Y, Z. You cannot convince anyone otherwise that they're wrong in doing it, whether it's putting someone in a closet, whether it's the LDS church used to shock homosexuals' testicles.
Yes, they did.
At
Conversion
BYU.
camps, baby. Conversion
because God told us to, right? I think some sick fuck was like, I want to see what happens when we shock these homosexuals because I'm a homosexual. That's what I think.
Shock them in the balls. Shock them in the balls. I like getting shocked in the balls. So, like, you know, it would be really cool if we got a bunch of gay people in a room and we just shock the shit out of their balls.
Yeah. And I'll take them into my office and have them suck me off.
You're not allowed to look at pornography. Like, that's one of the things.
Yeah.
So, but then they were showing these people pornography.
Are you hard yet? Are you hard yet?
Yeah.
Are you hard yet? Oh, you're getting a boner. Shock his dick, dude.
Shock it.
You want to see the pain?
And then they're behind their glass door, just like furiously masturbating, like, oh, you're so fucking hard right now. Like, Jesus God. Like, so all of this stuff, all of this stuff, you know, no matter how extreme it gets, from whether you're just locking some kid in a door to killing, mass genocide, you are okay and validated to do that because a higher power is telling you to do it. That is the problem I have with so many religions. Like, everyone's always like, oh, you know, it's all about good and doing good and all this kind of stuff. It's like, if that were true, that's awesome. Truly it is. But unfortunately, people have this mentality where I can do anything and there's no consequences because I'm validated in doing it.
Oh, go on. Go on,
and I was just saying, well, you listening to you talk about getting locked in a fucking closet as a child, and those adults are going, we're doing the right thing. Oh, I'm in Catholic school, I'm going to beat these kids with the ruler.
Doing it for God, baby.
Education, throw it up to Jesus.
For me, that's another big thing. A lot of people, when they ask me about that, they're like, well, you know, you're Mormon or whatever. And I my go-to answer for everyone, like, because Lauren kind of mentioned, because I do date and a lot of people here are LDS, I always just tell them, I'm like, look, whatever you want to say, I consider myself a not good Mormon. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't follow all these rules. I kind of do my own thing. And that's about it. And that's a big thing, is that I'm like, look, I'm just telling you right now, I don't subscribe to all these very weird details of your guys' stuff. And that's a big part of how I explain it, is that I don't like the idea of elitism in any aspect, especially in the Mormon church.
Here it is. Why do you stick around? If you know all this stuff, James, if your family's out, if you know all this stuff, I know the community is important to you, but why do you keep hanging on to you being a Mormon? Like, I want to know what's that silver lining for you that keeps you? Because, like, whenever I left, I was like, at first I was agnostic. I didn't believe anything. Well, I you know, there could be a heaven, there could be a hell. Then I went through this atheist period. Now I'm doing something completely different. I mean, like, what keeps you saying, like, I'm a Mormon?
That's a very valid question. So
James went through that atheist phase.
Do what, Lauren?
You went through that atheist.
I was just going to say, what you just said is exactly what happened to me, right? So I leave. Everyone in my family is a member. And I'm like, fuck all this. I don't care anymore.
He was very angry, I will say. And I get it. Like, I 100%. But we didn't understand.
Yeah.
But we didn't know what was going on. He didn't tell us he left.
Yeah.
He was scared of what we would say. So we're all like,
I was afraid I was going to lose my family. So
no, I get it. Yeah.
I go through that, very much atheist, very much agnostic. I'm like, I don't know. I can't say that I know, because no one can say that they know anything for certain, which is a big part of the Mormon church. Is everything is, I know this. I know God. I know Joseph Smith.
Earth is 3,000 years old.
God,
and you're
don't
like,
talk
no,
about
it's not. No,
yeah,
it's
that doesn't
not.
make any fucking sense.
How does that make sense?
Right.
Dinosaurs? That's a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
You're like,
we have friends that don't believe dinosaurs are real, and
who have
don't
masters and doctorates degrees.
Shut the fuck up, dude.
It's fucking nuts.
Wild.
So James, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. So get through that, and then get to a good place, right? I'm at a place where I don't need religion in my life. I don't feel any less happy, anything like that, right? And then I started going through a divorce last year. My ex-wife, she and I on good terms as far as like
I'm
as
sorry
relationship.
to hear that. Relationship.
Oh no, it's okay. It's definitely mutual. We're both very much happier now, and we both, like I said, we're still like on great terms as far as like divorced couples go. It's like the best possible situation you could ask for. But we got married very young. She was 18, I was 20. You know, that's what Mormons do. And so I I got divorced, and I'm kind of like looking at my life like, all right, well, let me look at what I am missing. And I truly believe that everybody in their life needs some form of spirituality. I'm not saying religion, I'm saying spirituality.
And that's something that I'm super big on when it comes to religion. I believe that if it gets you out of gets you out of bed, if it makes you a better person, if it gets you to be a happier person and feel like your life has purpose, subscribe to religion, whatever. Like, I might not agree, Lauren might not agree, but like, it's just, that's your choice. And if it makes you a better person, that's fine. When it comes to like actually inflicting others inconvenience, my religion gets to dictate what you do with your life. That's when it becomes a problem.
Here's my thing with that is I agree with the Mormon thing. The problem with the Mormon church and a lot of churches, but especially this one, they don't tell the people the truth.
Everything
Right at the so
top.
Much. Right. I did not know. I had to listen. James is like, hey, listen to the last podcast on the Left Joseph Smith series.
Hell yeah, that was a good series.
It was my favorite. It told me things I didn't even know. It was so insane.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, this can't be true, but it's all backed up.
Yeah,
100%
if the Mormon church fed all the information, they fed it, and they didn't gaslight everyone, and they were like, this is how it is. Just own your horrible history.
Right.
The slaughtering of Native Americans. Just own it. It's not good, but say that it happened, and then someone chooses to stay in. I'm not going to argue with you because you know what you were subscribing to.
Yeah.
I did not. James did not.
What my class at BYU did. They tried to do that, but they tried to explain it away by giving answers. And I was like, this is the worst fucking answer I've ever heard in my goddamn life. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
Well, yeah, because you have like a hierarchy basically sitting in a room going, how do we explain that it's okay for Black people to be here? How do we explain the fact that he was a liar and a child molester and
he married a 14-year-old girl?
Yeah, and just everything. Like, how do we explain his past? How do we explain the fact that he was reading golden tablets in a hat and reading them off to somebody else so they could write it just because he couldn't? Like, they have to find ways to be able to explain that, because people like you, like me, like everybody else out there have questions for this kind of thing, and they have to have answers, or else the facade goes away. There's no more invisible shield. It is just the bold-faced lie that is what that Joseph Smith created.
I got to this point where I kind of decided, and I still believe this, everyone needs spirituality in their life, right? And our parents, Lauren, my parents, they meditate. That's their version of spirituality now, right?
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. They got to the point where, like, okay, well, they were in the church since 57, 56 years. That's a long
fuck.
Like,
yeah, they're not doing great.
They're not. Yeah, they are still in that anger phase. Hundreds of thousands of dollars donated to this church. They didn't know where it's going. A lot of stuff, right? So their experience and mine and Lauren's are different, because mine and Lauren's are like, all right, I don't have kids. Lauren had kids. All this stuff. We were able to move on, I feel like, relatively a lot quicker than them. And they have, they're like, we sent our kids to other countries for 2 years. We did all this stuff. Both of our parents served missions in Italy and Japan, all this stuff. So they have found their way of coping and their spirituality through meditation. Whereas me, the way I've explained it to people is that I feel like for a lot of people, that finding that way to unlock the door to allow spirituality in your life is it's kind of hard. It really is shaped when you're younger. And I feel like the lock on how to unlock that door is different for everybody. If you grew up in a family where it's like, oh, we're not religious, it's a lot easier to open that door in a million different ways, right? In Europe, a lot of people aren't religious, and yet they're some of the most open-minded, very spiritual, not like voodoo woo spiritual, but like connected with the earth, and they could do a lot of hiking and stuff like that, right? But if you grow up in a very high demand religion, the way that keyhole to open that door to spirituality gets really, really narrow. And for me, I feel like the only way I've ever been able to truly feel like unlock that door is through the Mormon church, because that is where I learned to be religious. I spent 2 years of my life every day, literally every day, 24/7, wake up, go to sleep, pray a million times, read the scriptures, was through the Mormon church. And so going back after so many years of, I think I was out for like 2.5 years, like completely separate, right? Going back, I went and I thought, like, this doesn't make me angry. It makes some people angry, and they're totally valid. They don't want to go into a Mormon church. And I'm like, hey, that's your choice. I have no problem with that. But me going back it was like I had that door again open, and I was able to feel like the spirituality in my life, not because of necessarily it's the Mormon church, like, oh, this is the one true God or whatever. It's just that's the way I know how to express my spiritual expression. I don't know if this is making any sense to you.
It is.
This,
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
This is how I explain it. And so because of that, I use it as a way to, hey, you know what? I don't meditate, but sometimes every couple of weeks I'll be like, you know what? I kind of feel like I need some spiritual cleansing in my life. Go to church, sing some hymns. If they are hymns they're thinking about, they're like Joseph Smith and stuff, I won't participate. I hate that. They do exist. Yep. But
praise to the man.
Praise to the man. But the other ones I'm okay with. So, I sit there and I listen to the talks and everything like that. And I do a lot. Like my friends know this that I go with. They know my stance on stuff. And they'll look at me every once in a while and I have my eyebrows raised like, okay. All right.
It's a little weird that you're crossing that line right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
But anyway, yeah, for me, that's the reason why. I feel like it's the way I know how to allow spirituality in my life. And because I don't 100% think this is the one and only true church, which is what's taught, it's easier for me to be able to kind of step through that bullshit and just be like, you know what, this helps me, but I don't think it's the one and only. If there's another way I find later in my life to do that, I'm probably not going to continue going. But, for right now, because of that, and also, like Lauren said, the community part of it for me is a big part. A lot of my friends are LDS. It helps with that, but they know my stance. None of my friends think that I'm like a full-fledged, like true to the faith Mormon. Like everybody kind of knows my situation, which
the
helps.
covenant path.
Yeah, the covenants. Sure. Yeah. So anyway, that's a very long answer, but that's why I.
No, that was very very well worded. I mean, honestly, my follow-up question is, what was the first thing you guys did that broke covenant or temple rules when your veil was removed, when you were able to really think?
Yeah, I just slept with 1,000 donkeys. No.
Donkeys, God, fucking damn it.
Like, that's not Mormon,
dude.
He's like, in what direction? Why was that the way you went? Wow, James.
I don't remember. I'm trying to think. So, because again, I left the church when I was married and she was a member.
Right.
So probably I stopped wearing my garments was probably the first thing.
Did you feel
That's
like you were
usually the first
breaking like
thing.
just all kinds of rules?
You do feel weird.
Oh, just like you're like releasing the shackles.
Yeah. It felt weird.
Yeah, it's weird because you're supposed to wear them all day, every day.
All the time. Trying to remember. I didn't drink because again, my spouse at the time was like, hey, I don't want you drinking because not because it was Mormon. She just didn't want anyone drinking, which is valid. I don't drink now, and it's not because of religious thing. I stopped drinking a couple months ago during my divorce. I was like, I just don't want to, put myself in that headspace. And I've kind of felt better since then. I have no problem with drinking. I feel zero like negativity towards my friends that drink. I go with them to bars. But, like, I don't drink, but I remember drinking. Like, I think a couple months later, she was like, yeah, it's fine. You can try alcohol. And I was like, yay, this tastes like shit. Like, it was like,
welcome to it. It's garbage.
Alcohol.
Yeah. Now I love the flavor of beer, though. I love beer. So,
yeah,
that was
I have, whenever I do the podcast, I have to have at least like 2 or 3 whenever I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I just something to, I don't know, get like more of a decent headspace. That's pretty much what I'm always looking for.
Yeah. I feel that. So that's for me, probably other than taking off my Mormon garments, like, probably drinking, I think. I don't remember. Nothing too crazy. Again, I was married at the time, so it wasn't like I was just running through these streets fucking everything.
Right, all of us were married.
Just tagging and bagging them, James. I see you doing it, man. I see you doing it.
Yeah, I'm single now. No. But yeah, that
Hunter on the prowl.
What about you, Lauren? Was yours like coffee?
No, so again, it's weird because they teach you when you leave the church, you're taught as a member. Like when people leave the church, it's because they want to sin. That's what they teach you. So it's funny because that's the last thing on your mind. You're like, I would like to not sin because I'd like this to be true.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. Like, so for me, my husband wasn't out yet, but I was like looking up, is coffee and tea bad for you? Because I'm like, let me research. They tell you it's bad.
Yeah.
And no, it's actually really good. Tea is really good for you. And I didn't know that. And so
super healthy.
I'm reading this like, what the hell? Like, this is what they lied.
But
like,
Joseph Smith
stuff.
He
I
said.
was so mad. Right. I was so mad. So I was like, let me just get some black tea to try. Well, garments was the first thing. And I tried black tea, hated it. Because I don't like tea. I don't know why I tried that. But coffee and I would say the garments was the first thing. And I would say terrifying.
Everyone that leaves the church, that's the first thing they do. Before they ever do anything else, they're like, most people don't show up to a bar in their garments. Like, Yeah, I'd say that. And then
we were extreme. Well, I was an extremist member. Like I said, people are nuanced now where it's like, you can wear them, when you go to church or the temple. No, like
not
we were
before.
taught you wear them all day, every day, unless,
Mhm.
there's like 3 things you're not, you can like take them off for. And so after that, it was like, we lived this, I did not drink coffee, any of this. So you're very much feel weird when you don't do that. So now with the nuance people doing these things and they are members of the church, it makes me a little bit crazy. That is something that still like kind of makes me, it's like a trigger, is if I see people who are active doing these nuanced things where I was taught like, no, you shouldn't do that. Of like, but they're doing it. Like it pisses me off in like a very weird way.
Have you ever snapped out on anybody, even your brother, whenever it comes to like breaking rules because you were so into it for so long?
No, Jameson. So you asked at the beginning too, like James and I, our whole family, we get along really well. I mean, there's issues in families. Like some of our siblings are more at an angry place. Some are more at a YOLO, like let's go in the other direction.
Yeah.
Right. And so like party, like, which is, we're all supportive as long as we're safe, and that's another thing. We were never taught how to drink properly, how to, so we're learning as adults. So it's super weird.
Yeah.
Like
my brother and I at 25 and 23 getting absolutely like drank an entire bottle of plastic vodka, just vomiting our guts out. We're like, this is great. Like,
no, I never.
We didn't know.
James, we talk openly about it, and it's never been weird.
Yeah,
James is like, it's actually really weird, and she's a bitch.
I hate my life. No, it's great. Yeah. The weird thing for me is like, I know like eventually when I start dating and stuff like that, like I live in such a weird limbo. I'm not a Mormon. I'm not a Mormon. I live in this very weird space, which I'm fine with. It makes me happy. Everyone that I've talked to usually is okay with it. But someone who is a member or not a member, either one of those two are going to be like, okay, but you're not where I'm at, right? Because I live in such a strange spiritual world of Mormonism. That's what's weird for me, is that like coming to the terms of being like, whoever I like, I'm going to have to explain this to them. And then also my family's going to have to be okay with them. And I don't think my family would ever like jump down anyone's throat. No. But at the same time, if they were like super Mormon, I could see it going a lot worse than if they were not Mormon. You know what I mean?
Because we talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
So them kept making, we would never want them to be uncomfortable.
Exactly.
When it's like, we're going to talk about Satan's anus. Like Satan's a very big part of our conversation.
We love talking about Satan. Even we were members.
Oh yeah.
Love Satan. So yeah. But the thing is I feel like I kind of gauge that by when I talk to people, because I tell them where I'm at and I ask them, I'm like, so like a big question.
It's like prodding. It's like prodding. You're trying to prod their reaction so you can judge on your answers.
Exactly.
Because you don't want like some kind of bad interaction. I used to have to do that for years with people. Yeah. Like my family would still go to church even after I had left, and like I was fine with them going. I didn't really give a shit. And one day let's say like Sunday they brought somebody over, and it would be like, where are you at on the spectrum? Where can I what can I poke at to be like?
Yeah. My go-to question is, so like, what are your feelings on evolution? Because that question answers so many things.
Oh yeah, especially for you guys. It's like boom.
Yeah. Right.
Like,
because like
yes or no. Yes or no.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like, if you choose to not believe in evolution, that means that it immediately says so much. Like you will not let anything question your beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
You immediately believe 100% in the Bible, that it's a literal book. Like it says so much about, like, even LDS people don't necessarily not believe in evolution, but the ones that don't believe in evolution are like this super extreme, like,
or they're not taught it fully. I did not fully understand it because I wasn't taught it, and I wasn't like I understood like, okay, evolution's a thing from animals. I genuinely did not understand how humans like that whole thing, because I wasn't taught, and I didn't think for myself. Guys, I'm not great, and I'm throwing myself under the bus, but it's like, for me, the Adam and Eve, that it didn't fit for me. So I'm like, I'll just put that in a box and think about that later. You know.
But then also we grew up in the South where our teachers wouldn't teach it because they were Christians, and they'd be like, today we're going to talk about evolution, and they'd be pointing up like, but we know what actually happened. That happened in my public high school. And I was sitting there like, what the fuck? Because our parents taught and believe in evolution.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Darwin. Yeah.
I'm like, what
we
the
had a
fuck?
teacher get fired because she wouldn't teach it, like
Yeah,
talk
we
about
had-
it. She
yeah,
wouldn't
we had a
talk
teacher get
about
fired. I'm like, you have a college degree in science.
You should
you
be
won't
you
teach-
should be very versed in this. I don't
Yeah.
understand where the problem is. Like
I
you should understand how
distinctly-
science works.
Yeah, I remember that class. I'll never forget it because I was like, this is public school. Like, this is public school. And she's pointing at the ceiling, being like,
day.
yeah, it was nuts. I'm like, you are choosing ignorance. Like, you are choosing to not be informed. And that's like, everyone, it's okay to, like, people can have their own beliefs, and I'm totally okay with that. I'm just saying, for me, I don't want to be in that. I'm not going to probably want to be friends with someone who refuses to learn. Like, I don't do forced ignorance, or I'm not going to date someone who refuses to learn and know things. So anyway, that's my go-to question. That's the beginning.
That's a good one.
Where I start getting deeper and deeper and deeper. So yeah. Also, like, members, I'll be like, what do you feel about LGBTQ people? And they're like, well, you know what the Lord says. And I'm like, well, I know what I'm saying.
No, I know.
Peace out, bitch. We're not
It's
friends
been
anymore.
real. It's been fun, but it hasn't been real fun.
Exactly.
Gotta go.
Yeah. That's a big one too with members of the church. I'm like,
so James, as a traveling missionary for the LDS church, what was the worst interaction you had outside of like a very well-known Mormon area?
Okay, so I was in my mission in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Ecuador, so they give you like one place and you go there. So I lived in Ecuador for 2 years. I'm trying to think of the worst interaction. My very first area was in the middle of nowhere, like quite literally. It was 2 hours from any city. Every building was made of like sticks, except for in the main city, they were all made of like bricks, but it was like really, really dangerous bricks. Like the electricity and stuff like that was not great. The power went out all the time. I got shot at a couple times by some people in my first area.
Fuck.
Yeah. That was a not.
You're
fun
like, you'd
interaction.
stop if you knew this was for the Lord.
Yeah, I'd be like, if you knew
Trying to
God-
save you guys. Come on. What the fuck?
Yeah, literally.
So
that was crazy. I had some people trying to it's 2 years of trying to convince people to join this religion. I have so many stories. One time we went and taught this person who was an evangelical priest or preacher or something like that. And we always start and end our lessons with prayers. And I should have seen it coming. I asked him if he wanted to say our closing prayer. And down there, the evangelical those people, when they pray for like 15 minutes, easy. It's like half their sermon. So I was like, oh, would you like to say the prayer? And my companion, who's from Peru, he looks at me like, what the fuck did you just do that for? And I realized what I just asked, and he's like, absolutely. He calls in all of his neighbors. Yeah, he calls in everybody from around the street. He rolls out this speaker to the living room. I'm like, what is going on? Holds up a microphone,
Mormons.
and he's like, in the name of God, and he's like, bless these two that the demons will leave them. Bless these two. They start putting their hands on us. We're sitting there like, what the fuck is happening? That went on for like 15 minutes. Like, we kept opening our eyes, like, because you're supposed to close your eyes when you pray. We're looking at each other like, we're like,
close your hands and all that shit.
Yeah, we're like, we need to get the fuck out of here. Everyone's like dancing around. Dogs are running through the living room like, and we're just like, what the fuck? Like,
dude, you're lucky they didn't start like pulling out snakes and like start like
right.
Yeah,
Just,
like
it was
barehanding copperheads.
Exactly. It was crazy. Yeah, that was one of the funniest ones because we got done with it. We just looked at each other like, what the like? He was like, Father Norris, why the fuck did you ask that dude to say a prayer? Like, oh man, that happened.
It's a good story.
It does make a good story. One time there was this area, and it was like bamboo huts. They were raised off the ground because we were in like a swampy area. It's like underneath all the houses with like water. This lady kicked my companion off of the bridge into the water.
No.
He was this tiny guy. He was from where was he from? Chile, I think. He weighed maybe 90 pounds. He was tiny.
Easy chucking. You just grab him by like the shirt by the pigtails and pull him a tilde, dude.
Exactly. Swing him.
Yeah.
So we knock on their door, and we're off the ground, like, I don't know, it was pretty high off the ground, and there's like water underneath, and there's like snakes and stuff down there, and we're like, we're missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ, and she's like, oh yeah, and then just like pushes him, and I was like, elder. So, like, I had to like every couple, I don't know, every 100 yards or something, they'd have ladders just in case you fell in or something like that. You could crawl out.
Holy shit! Holy fucking shit!
So I'm like running over to the edge. I'm like,
Oh my
Elder,
God.
Elder. I like ran over to the
That's
thing and had to like
hilarious.
climb down and like swim out to get my companion. And
Holy fuck.
it was pretty funny. That one, yeah. I don't know. You look at him and laugh now, but at the time I was like, he's gonna fucking die. There's like alligators and shit. I'm in
There's
Ecuador.
some
Like,
dangerous shit in that water. We should go get
yeah.
him.
That is not-
When did
Who
this not?
does that?
When did this stop being a game? We are now playing with human lives.
This is
Yeah,
real.
exactly.
It's like
So-
just don't answer the door instead of throw the human in the snake
Right,
infested water. Just
right.
don't answer. Or
Well,
hide.
yeah. There's not a whole lot going on in that country a lot of times. So they're kind of just like, let's see what's at the door and open the wood hut. And then all of a sudden there's these two white kids in white shirt and ties, and we're like sweating our balls off. Like, you want to hear about Joseph Smith?
Okay, I got one more question before we fucking end this thing. I have had such a good time with you two, dude, and I knew I would. I knew I'd have such a good time with the two of you. So my last question for the night, it's a heavy hitter. Are you happy since you've left? And are you happy since you've relaxed on everything? Obviously, you know who's directed at what.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you want to go first, Lauren? Or you want me to?
Sure. Yes, I am. It took a while, but the relief, the guilt lifted, the never
free?
being enough. I do. I do
Good.
feel very much like I feel now like an adult, like I can make decisions for myself, because then it was this is what you do. You get married at this age, and then you do this, and then you serve a mission, and then my life is laid out. Now it's like, what do I believe? What do I want to do? What is my voice and my opinion? Which I think has been very cool to learn and figure out. But it's also been difficult with kids, having a faith crisis with little kids when they ask questions. When one was raised, I mean, he was like 5 when I left. And so he was asking, why don't we going to church and all these things, and trying to give him answers that I didn't know yet. But now, yes, much better place. I feel free. I feel really peaceful. Like he was asking about death, and like who thinks like that? Like you're 5, but they do, and I'm like, I'm okay with not having answers anymore. I'm like, you know what? We don't know.
That's a
Some
good place
people
to be,
claim to, but-
honestly. That's a very good place to be.
I love to be able to have my mind be changed. Like change my mind. I'm totally fine with that. Like I love being in a place now where I can do that.
Absolutely. All right, James, are you happy since the veil has been lifted from your eyes and you've relaxed more on your religious beliefs and views?
Yeah, 100% I am happier. I would never, even if I had the choice, like I know people say like, oh, I would love to go back, like even if, and I could live in that happy space. Never, ever, ever, never would I want to go back to the way that I was living. The biggest thing for me in life, I feel like, is relationships we have with people.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is everything, right?
Right.
Because that's all that we know for sure. Like I know people are like, oh, God exists, whatever. You don't know that. You can say you do, you don't know that. But I do know that my sister's my sister. I do know that you are now my friend. And I value that friendship. And a big problem I have and still do had and have with religions, that God mentality of everything's, I believe everything and I'm right and you're wrong, is that elitism, and you look down on other people because they don't view the same thing as you, because, oh, if only they knew the truth and they'd be so much happier. And leaving that like judgment, like being judgment free towards people and allowing myself to like truly be friends with people, and like whatever you believe, whatever you are, I accept that. I feel like makes all my relationships so much purer, and it makes everything I do in life better. And so even though I choose to still associate myself with the church, obviously, like we've talked about, I don't align myself with all the views and everything. I'm so much happier now because everything I do with like a pure intent of, because I want to be your friend and because I want to have this relationship with you, not because I feel like I'm trying to convince you to join my church, or not because I feel like in the end, in the next life, I'll be a missionary and I'll also make you join my church. Like what a fucking crazy way of viewing life.
So this is life now. Yeah. This is all we have that we know.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you believe something else, this is the only thing you can prove.
Yeah, this is the only thing we can prove. And like Lauren said, the biggest thing is I feel like I'm an adult and I can do whatever the fuck I want. And if
hell yeah, I love that.
If I choose that I want to go like and have a beer with my buddy on Saturday and then the next day go to church, I feel zero guilt doing that because I feel like I made that decision.
You are one of the most interesting Mormons I've ever spoken to. I'm not gonna lie. I'm super excited that we got to sit down and do this. And I believe with that, I think we're going to end this episode right now. If you want to check out Lauren and James, they are Sort of Kind of Funny podcasts. You can find them wherever you guys get your podcasts. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, whatever. We're now on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to everything that you can. Give us a shout out. Also, I have to do a special shout out to One Nothing Podcast, Beyond the Shadows Podcast, the Suspended Sentence Podcast. They have been fantastic to us. I also can't forget the weekly Tall Talk Podcast and the Cartoon Dumpster Podcast. You guys have been like a family to us. I cannot thank you guys enough. And now I get to introduce the newest member to my family, Sort of Kind of Funny. James and Lauren, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. I hope you guys have enjoyed us guesting on your favorite podcast. We know you love this podcast, your favorite, but hopefully you're looking for maybe a little side dish.
They are very funny, and they have an energy. I don't know if you could feel it throughout this episode, but they banter off each other so fucking well. I wish my guys had half the potential you did. Just kidding, guys. I love you guys so much.
You guys are the grunge metal to our like 80s pop. Okay.
I'm fucking here for it, dude. I'm fucking here
that was
for it.
So fucking good, Lauren. That was so fucking good.
No,
Fucking here for it.
Like that is seriously like you guys are like anime and true crime, and we're over here like just being stupid.
But I love your stories
mesh.
though. Like I wish okay, Lauren, honestly, I wish I had 10% of the video, like the videos you post on Instagram. I wish I had 10% of that. Like I wish I knew even like a microscopic of that, because like I don't know how to do any of that. The way you guys represent yourselves, fantastic. I absolutely love your show. And if you're listening to the show, please check them out.
Gosh, thank you. This was so much fun, Tyler. Like we had a blast. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
James, do the plug. Do the where we're at.
Do the thing.
So
do the thing.
Do the thing. So Sort of Kind of Funny. That's gonna be our podcast. Everywhere you can find podcasts, we are there. On the social medias, we are Sort of Kind of Funny Pod. We have TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all the main things. Check us out. Message us if you would like to hear a specific kind of episode, or if you have any funny stories. We just do stories. So if you have a funny story and you want to hear it and have us just shit on the story, give it to us, baby. That's what we do.
Oh, you're really selling us right now, James.
Yeah.
Like, we'll be assholes.
Yeah. Like I said, this episode I think is a little more serious than our stereotypical.
That's what I love. That's what I love about it, because like all your like episodes are goofy and they're high energy, and this was like serious. I've never heard you guys be serious, and I love both of them.
It's fun though. I like it.
So we're for sure we're gonna plug the shit out of this episode on our side, so you can see like us and be like, oh, what is it about Sort of Kind of Funny? But yeah, thank you so much. The questions were great. We really love getting to know you. I mean, honestly, this has been so much fun. We've done other podcasts. This is probably one of my favorite podcasts we've done.
Yeah.
Just the real, it's just been so real, you know, and I feel like I said, you're not judging, you were curious to continue to know
you
us,
were not rude, very respectful. You read the Book of Mormon.
The Book of Mormon, like Jesus.
I had to do it. I had to do it for this, because like I know the background. I knew the background before I got into this, not only from last podcast on the left, but also from like YouTube and like being a little curious kid just on there, just typing up random shit. But like, I didn't feel like I understood your guys' story well enough. So I wanted to like dig more into it to understand you guys.
Awesome.
And then you finished and you're like, what did I just read?
Did I just waste like a week of my life?
Yeah. Oh, you're like, can I ask you one question before we finish? Like going into this?
Yeah.
Did you think we were going to be nut jobs after you learned all that?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. I've been talking to Lauren for like months and months. Like I've gotten to know her. I've asked questions about you. I thought you guys, so I didn't know the Mormon aspect, and like I really wanted you guys to like do a collab with us, because when we started, you guys were the first, like one of the first podcasts that followed us, and I felt like we kind of started at near the same time. Like we've taken a bunch of breaks because mental health, vacation, whatever, all that other bullshit. Like we've rearranged the show like 3 or 4 times. So like it's always been really difficult to like get everybody together and do an episode when you have that many people. It's super stressful and all that other shit. But like we started around the same time. So I was like, I want to do something with these guys. They're very interactive with their Instagram. They're very interactive with their fans. Like, do you guys understand that? Like, how long you guys been doing the show? Like, what?
A year. A little over a year.
Yeah.
A year and like 5 months now. Gosh. Yeah.
I was gonna say, we just crossed our 1 year. Like I took over our 2 years. 2 years. My bad. 2 years. We just crossed over our 2 years. I took over the Instagram 6 months into the show being a thing. So like, I want to say like a year and a half, because like also like the first 8 of our episodes are completely gone because they were so bad. It was so bad. It was so bad. They were so
It always
garbage.
is, but
Oh,
it's
yeah,
okay.
man.
You
Yeah.
gotta get there.
Oh yeah, you gotta just fuck it up so bad until you figure it out.
Hmm.
But I have had an absolute blast with you guys. I cannot thank you guys enough for 1, tuning into this, and 2, giving me your time for me to ask you these questions and, you know, poke around inside of your head. It has been an absolute pleasure. So with that, I'm going to say stay misfortunate.
Always listen to Mom.
And we're out.
Thank you for joining us. Remember, always listen to Mom.